Hi, and welcome to The Long Game, a podcast by Macau Group where we sit down and have raw conversations with talented specialists and people who are passionate about what they do in the built environment. My name is Kelvin Muriithi, and I lead the team here at Macau. Check us out at macau.com.au to learn more. That's makao.com.au. This is Volume 1, where we explore the ins and outs of energy efficiency in buildings. Today's guest is Burkhard Hansen, one of Australia's most experienced passive house builders, with professional experience from Germany, Denmark, Switzerland, and Austria, and now Australia. He's also the founder and director of CarbonLite. CarbonLite is a building company that blends passive house principles, design thinking, and prefab construction to create healthy and high-performance homes. Enjoy the conversation and leave the door to your mind open. Thanks for making time today, Burkhard, and I appreciate, especially given the current conditions we're in, the lockdowns, extended lockdowns. Hope you've been well.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's been an interesting time, I guess. It's been the same for everyone. It's challenging, of course, but we will have to continue working and do the best out of our current situation. So it's been okay.
Yeah, true. I guess we've had a few chats offline, and I think a good starting point would be just for the listeners to get to hear more about yourself, hear about you from your own words. Maybe just to begin with, tell us about yourself, maybe a little bit of your professional journey as well.
Yeah, sure. Cut me off if I go too long here. I'll just occasionally rattle on for a little bit too long.
Sure.
Look, I'm a carpenter by trade. I'm born and raised in Germany, and I started traveling in my younger years. And after traveling quite a few places in the world, ended up in New Zealand, in Australia after that. And it just fell in love with Australia the minute I got here. Throughout my journey travelling over here, I met my now wife and moved to the UK together for a couple of years before we returned to Melbourne. I pretty much started working as a carpenter again. Always have. I absolutely love my job. I wouldn't know what else I'd be doing if I'm not a carpenter. Mm-hmm. And so it started with that, really. When I started working over here, it was it's almost a journey back in time. I'm trying to work this carefully here because I don't want to offend anyone, but from a building standard point of view, it was just unbelievable to see the two standards, the European standard, having worked in this for many years, and then coming to Australia and experiencing how homes were built at the time, and they still are today in 2021. Yeah. And it was just it was shocking, really, to be honest with you, because we knew from that homes built to that sort of standard really make the occupants sick. That it's just quite a kind of risky thing to do.
What's a rough timeline at that for when you came in?
That was the big bushfires were 2009, and then we went to the UK and we're back in 2011.
Yeah, gotcha.
Right, so I started working as a carpenter, saw what was being done here, and just couldn't. Yeah, it sounds cheesy, but I couldn't live with myself doing this. If I knew it was wrong, so I just had to get out and force that change and be that change. And so I started my own business and doing what we're doing now. And at the time, it was a very different time. Australia's come a long way since then. So there was no membranes available. There was no energy efficiency, no talks about it. There was very little prefab. So it's very, very new. And we proposed that we're prefabricating high-performance buildings and then transport them to site. So we combined the two, what was in some people's mind impossible things, and went through with it and went ahead with it. And like any young business, we've had our ups and downs, I guess, but then eventually sort of established ourselves and grown to this point where we're at now, and sort of slowly but surely became one of the market leaders in this field, which was really interesting to be part of that journey and really forcing that change. The company's has grown since then, and I don't get to do as much carpentry as I'd love to, but I equally still love my job now, and have a fantastic team working with me on this. And here we are, almost 10 years later, and the industry is still going incredibly slow, unfortunately, in this change, in my opinion. But we have certainly seen a massive amount of change, and really an appetite from the consumers for better homes. There's a steadily increasing awareness and demand for what we do. So that's great.
Oh, nice. And congrats on, I guess, that success and that 10-year mark as well. It's not a small feat in business. And also the fact that, because sometimes you do see the challenges, and more often than not, we tend to comment about it and not take any action. So it is commendable on your end that you decided to take some action and chart your own path. You did mention that you saw the discrepancies between what was going on in Australia and versus what was going on obviously. From a builder's perspective, what do you think are some of the obstacles that in the Australian market that are kind of enforcing the poor build quality or the poor home quality? Is it mostly the minimum codes, or was it something else? Is it the market adoption? What do you think from a builder's perspective?
I think there is we've got the perfect combination of disaster here, really, because you've got firstly, there is a building boom, right? There's a huge demand, and the housing market is going crazy. We're expanding population growth, so a lot of homes need to be built. And there is, as it stands, we are really lacking the amount of labour there and builders to keep up with this. So if supply and demand is off balance, that is never really a good starting point for change, right? Change generally happens if something big happens, there's a crisis, and people are forced to rethink and restructure and reinvent themselves. Now, we don't really have that urgency here because everyone is kind of working, everyone is making money, it's going well. So why change? Why would you rock the boat now? That's dangerously ignorant, but that unfortunately is the reality to some extent. Not for everyone, of course, but for the mass market, I think that is an issue. Secondly, we've got a lack of awareness. People just accept the current standard because, well, that is what it is. You know what I mean? Those people are not really aware that there is an alternative. So if you tell them, hang on, well, we can build this better and we actually seal this well and have a heat recovery, ventilation and constant fresh air, they're going like, yeah, of course I'd like that. I mean, this is offline. I guess we spoke about the car example. If you're saying, look, would you like a car with a seatbelt? You might not die if you put the seatbelt on. They're going like, yeah, brilliant. Of course, that's a good. It seems like a reasonable thing to suggest, I guess, to have something that doesn't do any harm to you. So there's a lack of awareness, which is now massively growing, and like I was saying before, the demand is really massively increasing. Internet helps, social media helps. A lot of the awareness now spreads a lot quicker than it used to because of the internet. People can do a lot more reading. Then we obviously got proof in the weather conditions constantly changing. So people going like, something is happening here, but whether you believe in climate change or not, people realize this we're heading into a direction that is really not sustainable. And that all of this supports an increase in general knowledge. Then I'm nearly done here. A few more points. I think the building code is not catching up quick enough, and that's just simply it's not as easy as, I don't want to be one of these people that just blames the code and saying, well, just change the code and everything will be okay. You can't just simply overnight change the code, because you need to allow the industry to grow with that change and actually change. So because every business needs to change, every subcontractor needs to change. That doesn't happen overnight. We're trying to change an entire country here, and that's not as simple as blaming the code. The code, however, I think could do better. We could enforce more change, or at least create a bit of a forecast and saying, look, this is what we're going to do with, to achieve a certain outcome, and people and businesses and builders will adapt to this. They will. They always have. We have seen this across other industries. That is what it is. As soon as government steps in and sets certain targets and certain rules, business responds to us. Then whether you get incentives to build well, and the other one is heavier tax, or whichever way this might go, there's options there. But I think we could do more. But I also understand that it's not easy to just overnight change everything. So, for example, everyone will go, well, passive house or high performance should be mainstream. It should be, everyone should be doing this.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that sounds like a really great, ambitious goal. But first question that pops to my head, who's going to do all the blower door testing? The airtight testing on all the homes. We simply haven't got enough people doing this sort of blower door test if the code would change tomorrow. So it's not realistic to ask for an overnight change. But having said that, we obviously need to start somewhere, and the code has started somewhere. We has introduced a blower door testing as an alternative to prove air tightness, and I think there's now 10 exchanges minimum in there. So we're getting there. We are getting there.
Question is, Burkhard, is transition towards a better house?
That's the one.
Too slow. Because now the gap to European standards are getting wider and wider. A lot of the European cities are mandating passive house. We still, even in 2022, dropped. Not major changes, yes, 7-star rating, but still allowing some very poor performance in glazing. So now we should try to accelerate towards passive house, because climate change is not waiting for us to
no, that's right. no, unfortunately not. They won't take a year off, unfortunately. So it is very alarming. And if you ask me on a personal level, I 100% agree with you. I think we need to be much, much more aggressive about this. And whether you go towards passive house or not, it's to simply an improvement to people's comfort and their health would be sufficient. So build better homes so people are healthier and more comfortable in their homes. Energy efficiency and the strain on the grid is or reduction on the strain on the grid is a byproduct. It's almost a thing that just happens without us doing much about it. We're building better homes, and the energy efficiency comes with it. So it's something that really needs to change quickly. And unfortunately, I think something dramatic needs to happen first before we really become more aware and you put a bit more pressure on this. But I hope I'm wrong. Let's put it that way.
So you've just mentioned something that again came up with in our offline chats that I want to expand a little bit on, which is the idea of starting with the goal in mind. And you've briefly mentioned it in the last in your last comment there, but healthy homes. So from your perspective, what are some of the principles you try to embed in your work, and how do you think about things from, okay, so this is the end outcome, or this is the end goal that we're trying to achieve, and then everything else, then it gives you a framework under which you can build things upon.
Yeah. That's a brilliant question. As a builder, if you go right back to the basics, the clients or a homeowner engages a professional to build their home. Just like you go and buy a car, you want that car to have side airbags and you have a seatbelt, you want that to keep you safe. So as a builder, your responsibility is to protect the client's best interest. Now, whether that is their, designing something with their budget in mind and not going over budget, or their health. And I think and I know from our mission and our team, sort of everyone connects to this mission, is our mission is to empower people to thrive in their homes. I don't want you just to live in shelter. I want you to live in a house that keeps you safe, that enables you to thrive. If a house needs to do just that, it needs to keep you warm when it's cold. It needs to keep you cool when it's hot. It needs to give you fresh air when there is 2 weeks of smoke cloud over the city. It needs to protect you during thunderstorm asthma. It does the basics, like at the moment, this is sort of a luxury add-on, which is ridiculous if you think about this, because the basic standard, the minimum standard of a house is to keep you safe and your family safe and the occupants healthy. So that, I think, is the driver. That is the foundation. That is CarbonLite's why. This is why we get out of bed in the morning, to make that change to people's lives, right? That sounds big and that sounds, borderline cheesy here, but it has to be the foundation. Everything else evolves around that. So from there on in, we're saying, okay, how do we get this done? Well, I want to, if you just purely financially, from a financial side, I want to create certainty where there is very little certainty. Okay, so I don't want any surprises. I don't want any holdups due to weather or any delays. So I cancel out any uncertainty that I can. And I do this by prefabricating or precision fabricating offsite in a safe, secure, dry, safe facility. And we can manufacture with, if it's bucketing down the rain or it's windy, I can manufacture in the dark if I have to. I switch the lights on and we'll keep moving. So that's one aspect. And the other aspect are the homes themselves. So passive house is the highest energy efficiency standard on the planet, or one of them, right? So if we can't get all the way to passive house, then we should at least incorporate these principles. And the principles is something that if you just move away from passive house for just a second and focus on the basics of building physics. No, you don't need to be an expert to figure these out, because I'm certainly no genius when it comes to this. But from a very early age, since I left school and I started my apprenticeship, we have been trained to understand the basics in building physics. And so that means there's cold air, there's warm air. Warm air can hold more moisture than cold air does. There is a dew point, and if that dew point is inside on the inside surface of your wall or inside your wall, you will have condensation in your wall. In a nutshell here, right? There's a lot more to it, but that's in very simple terms what happens. So the building in its environment, whatever climate it is, has to respond to this, to deal with this issue. So on the outside, it has to be diffusion open. We're using the ProClima range for all our projects. On the outside, the membrane is diffusion open, but it's weather tight. So like a Gore-Tex jacket, if you like, So you can go hiking with it. You can be warm in it and sweat in it. It's diffusion open and allows vapor to get out, but it's windproof and it's waterproof. Perfect. So follow that principle. External membrane, diffusion open, tick. The second one is to stop vapor and moisture to actually get into the insulation, because the insulation acts like a sponge almost in that wall and holds that moisture. So if you stop the moisture to get into the wall at the same time as creating an airtight building envelope with that airtight membrane, you've done it. So once you integrate this airtight membrane, we're using the Intello from ProClima there, as a consistent building envelope following the insulation all the way around. So walls, roof, floors, it has to be consistent. Then you have got all of a sudden a controlled environment where there is no leakages, no uncontrolled heat loss or heat gains, because air is just simply not traveling through. Vapor doesn't get into the building envelope. Voila, we deal with that detail. Then if you obviously don't have just walls and roof, you need to get some light in. So you start cutting holes into this thermal and airtight envelope, and you have to replace it with something that is equivalent to that performance, a high performance window. You can't use an ordinary window. You can't use an aluminium window that is not thermally broken, or single glazing, which are still used in 2021 in Australia. Today, like you see new developments coming up, and I don't know how they get this past the building surveys and regulations, but it's done today. It's ludicrous. So you need to, if you cut the building envelope for a door or for a window, complete the thermal and airtight building envelope. Seal it up in a high-performance window, double or triple glaze, it's up to you, and then but seal it in properly. Tape the edges, reconnect the frame to the membrane. There's another one done. So as soon as we've got the building envelope consistently sealed, we can now control the airflow in the house, which means I can create the perfect indoor environment all year, every day. Like it's just very simple. So that just simply means the heat recovery. You guys, you know the principles. I'm just going to keep this very simple. It's just basically hot, old, stale air out of the wet areas, taking out, and fresh air taken from the inside. Fresh air taken from the outside of the building and pumped back into the building. It's filtered from pollen and dust, and it does the heat exchange and delivers the fresh air, preconditioned fresh air, back into all the living areas. You know, it sounds complicated, but it really is not. It's just a simple heat exchange that is happening. It just preconditions the fresh air that comes in with the air that is already in the building, whilst not actually mixing. So you have got the perfect humidity level, the perfect fresh air amount in your house all year round. It doesn't get any better than that. I suffer from severe hay fever. I don't know, do you guys?
I have friends who do.
It is. I'm about to go through hell. Like it's spring now, and it's just torture. So, and when we're out on site or I'm working outdoors or meet with clients, I'm just gonna, I do the hay fever tablets and all the treatment. It doesn't do anything. Like I just hit it hard by lunch. I am
watery eyes all day long.
And it's by lunchtime. But I go back in my house and I'll recover within half an hour. Because it's just simply the pollen are filtered from that incoming fresh air. So it makes perfect sense. We have got bathroom fans in conventional buildings to get rid of the steam. That's conventional buildings. But it's just to draw air out. It makes no sense to not follow through. So if you just draw air out of the bathroom, that's hot water, that's steam, that's hot water. You paid for this. That comes through your hot water system. So why not use that steam to condition your fresh incoming air? It's free. You already paid for it. So we're just reusing a waste product basically to precondition the fresh air. And it's, just drawing this out and blowing the hot air straight to the outside or the steam from the bathroom, it's like throwing cash out of the window. It makes absolutely no sense. And on top of that, if you just draw air out uncontrolled in only one area and the building isn't airtight, you're basically depressurizing the building. So you're drawing air from all the gaps that you've got in your building envelope, power points and under the leaky doors. You polluted air basically comes back in. So whether the most recent one was during the last big bushfire season where we had 2 weeks of smoke cover hovering over Melbourne, and we all trapped in our houses. The government tells us to, health advice that we only got the advice that we've got is to stay inside your house.
And you have to. I think that was the first time we started wearing masks as well. If you wanted to go outside.
Yeah, that didn't really stop from there, did it? Yeah. Never took the mask off from there. Yeah. But if you think about this if you stay in your house, you're almost making it worse, because if let's say your house has got a leakage rate of 10, so that means 10 air exchanges per hour. That means there's still plenty of polluted air, and whether that's now hay fever or pollen, or if it's smoke getting into your house, but inside the leaky house, you still haven't got a reduced airflow rate. So you're almost in a way better off staying outdoors, to be honest, because at least there's consistent air movement. So it's just, it doesn't make any sense to go halfway. It has to be done well. And the passive house, going back to that, passive house basically ramps up the major components and takes it to the next level. But whether you build a passive house or just what should be the new standard, the new minimum standard, so let's call it that, should be a
healthy home.
Yeah, a healthy home. It should be a thermal bridge-free building envelope. That means consistent insulation, floor, walls, roof. Then there should be an airtight envelope to stop air leakages and being able to control the airflow rates inside the house and stop vapor and moisture getting into the insulation. Then you should have high-performance windows and doors, and you should have consistent ventilation, fresh air supply. So this whole concept of this misconception before we move on there, let me just clear this up front. People saying that if there's a power outage, will I suffocate in my house with once you got an airtight building envelope? And it's a legit question. Some people just actually go on like, hang on, I am actually worried here. But there is hundreds of cubic meter of air in a house. And if you really cut from power for that long, you just step outside. If you, you know what I mean? You won't suffocate in your house. You run out of milk before you run out of oxygen. So that is not a legit point. But we're getting these things from people that don't like what we've got to say, I guess. And the other thing is that people that often say, well, we've got windows, so we just open and close the windows, which is fine. You can do this in any high performance home, in a passive house. That's what openable windows are for. Of course, in spring, and if it's 20-degree day and we've got 50% humidity outside and there isn't any pollen flying around, it's beautiful. Everyone likes that. We're humans. That's what we do. But what if it doesn't? What if it's when it starts turning cold? What happens overnight when the temperature is lower? What if there's a thunderstorm asthma coming in, or it's raining, or you were at work, or it's too hot? All of this, and it's a random ventilation that is completely inconsistent, and it's nowhere near the same sort of fresh air supply that we can actually calculate and deliver in a high performance home. So it's a nonsense argument to compare window ventilation with heat recovery ventilation.
So that's one of the problems in NCC. I mean, there's an allowance to have operable windows of 5% of the floor area. And as you mentioned, if the conditions are not favorable, you close all the windows. So if you're in a school situation or in a childcare center, the whole winter the windows will be closed. So that's when you have this likelihood of spreading diseases. So only now they realize they have to have ventilation all the time to prevent COVID. But there were multiple other diseases happening back in 2019.
Diseases.
Also, the schools are old, so you have those operable windows. Absolutely no ventilation for probably 2/3 of the year.
Diseases is an interesting one that really came up through COVID now. Where people that all of a sudden going, oh, this is spreading now. Like we've got no ventilation. It's all, everyone is in there and the weather is not nice. And, that's a real problem. But it's always been an issue. It's been a massive issue. And in Europe, it's quite a few steps ahead of us here, where if you have got a classroom, let's say, and there's 30 or 20 students in there, and everyone is, let's say, rainy day, everyone plays outside and they're coming back in. Everyone transports such a huge amount of moisture into the building, whether it's on the boots, on the clothes, or people, the kids are running around and they're out of breath, So you've got an adult breathes out about 1 liter of vapor and moisture in 8 hours. So that overnight, to give us an idea or put this in perspective. So if you got now 20 kids put in one room, everyone's breathing heavy, that excess moisture without ventilation is going somewhere, and it's you can see it on the windows where it's actually obvious, where it's running down as condensation, hitting a cold surface and condensating on the window, but it's also heading into the walls where it sits, and that is the real issue, I think. Then you have got a cold surface together with a lack of ventilation and excess moisture. and all of a sudden you create the perfect breeding ground for mold. Like, you can't, this is it. This is the perfect scenario you could possibly create for mold growth. In classrooms, do you know what I mean? In for the children's, where we really need it the most, where, you know, if there is no, sitting in a moldy environment, that's mental in itself. But then you also need oxygen to stay alert, stay focused. Otherwise, you just pass out of sleep. I remember my school days where you just sit there and we're like 15 minutes in, and your head starts sinking towards the table because you're just tired. And the tiredness comes from a lack of oxygen. You know, the air quality is just so low. You've got this in bedrooms as well, where people in the mornings, it gets cold, they close the window. In the morning, you wake up, you had 8 hours sleep, but you're still tired. What happened? Well, I'll tell you what happened. You know, it's a lack of good quality air in the room.
Yeah,
we've got the
carbon dioxide.
My wife's family is in Adelaide, and when they come over and staying in our house, they get up in the morning, they go, oh man, I feel good. Like, every time I sleep so well in this house, you know. And it's not the mattress or anything. It's just simply a consistent fresh air supply that you can't hear, you can't feel it, but it makes a huge difference. It's one of those things that I think it's not really on people's radar, but how can it be? Like, how is it not a bigger deal? You know, when we talk about building standards, because right now we're all talking about, well, you know, we should blower door test and whatnot, but the ventilation of it is not mentioned in there at all. I mean, where I think they really need to go hand in hand. We're seeing volume builders now aiming to, you know, get down to 3 air chambers per hour. And then they're just saying, well, we get down to 3, you know, and that's not with an air tightness layer, by the way. That's just, you know, silicon around PowerPoints and trying to patch things up as good as we possibly can for now. But it doesn't go hand in hand with the ventilation system, because they don't know, well, that's another expense, we'll leave that out. And someone came up with the rule of thumb saying, if you go below 3 air exchanges per hour, then you need ventilation. Everything above that is fine. It is not fine. That is just, someone said that once to make them feel comfortable about what they do, and that's what everyone works off now. It's amazing how it happens.
So you're talking about trying to implement at least some principles of passive house. I think of all the principles, going from having good insulation or continuous level insulation, layer insulation, high performance windows, the mechanical ventilation is the ultimate. It's really hard to convince a regular client to go for like a mechanical ventilation with heat recovery. Trying to explain that's a more beneficial is in terms of healthy homes and preventing mold formation. Yeah, it's really difficult. I mean, that's as I said, cost-wise, that's the last option. Yeah.
See, and then that begs the question, why? I mean, if you're the owner of the school or school principal, whoever's in charge there, and you're saying, look, we can build this the conventional way. You might have some mold in the house, in the classrooms, and there will be excess moisture and, you know, an unhealthy level of CO2 in the air and whatnot. Or we can create a healthy classroom where kids will stay awake and we won't have any mold issues. I mean, that seems, if I would have the two options and I'm the owner of the school, I'm not sure why I would possibly go back to go, no, build the old way, that's fine. It won't be fine. It all comes down to costs, right? If it's extraordinarily more expensive, that you can do the calculation against it. We've built this childcare centre in Canberra, and I haven't got the exact figures, but there was thousands of dollars she would spend. I think it was 15 grand per year for her childcare centre or the other childcare centres that she owns. She was presenting at the Passive House conference as well for heating and cooling. So they're about 15 grand, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken. It is the childcare centre that we delivered in, I forgot the name now, Torrance. That's right, Torrance Childcare Centre. and it's the 14th most energy efficient building on the planet now. Now it's just a well insulated, well sealed wall with good windows and a heat recovery in it, and they've got so much solar PV on the roof because it's a larger building that I think she's paying $3 now. And
in bills.
Not 15.
Not 15,000.
Not 15,000. It's $3 now. So and the waiting list is crazy on this because parents recognize this. I mean, I would do this if there was a childcare centre in my area, or I'd drive further out of my way to drop my son if that would mean he'd be in a healthy childcare centre. I would, and I pay more because I know he's in a better environment there because they're spending a lot of time in there. So the case is there, and when the buildings become larger, it is also possible to deliver this on a similar price level. Is there a price increase? That's always the big one. Is there a price increase? Yes or no? It really depends on the building as well as complexity in the process. But generally, the larger buildings, it can be delivered for the same price.
Yeah, thanks for that breakdown. It's interesting. Actually, I'm curious to hear more how you balance between the bringing in the passive house principles, the prefabrication process, and also maybe the code complying with the codes. How do you find that process? Is it something that's relatively straightforward, or how has it been so far for CarbonLite?
It is everything but straightforward. To be honest with you, it's a lot of things, but not straightforward. But we were well aware when we started this journey that we're going to be facing a lot of challenges and even a resistance. So there's a few simple things where the code has got a section for bathroom fans. You install a bathroom fan that leaks air when it's not on. It just leaks hot air out of it, uncontrolled, no problem, no questions asked, right? You install a heat recovery ventilation, and you need to provide a ton of documentation how this operates, and then you've got to cross your fingers as well that the building surveyor is actually on board and says, "Yep, okay, I understand it now." Like that's fine, because overall you're not doing anything dodgy or anything shifty. That you're taking out overall more air than you would with the extraction fan, but you just do it consistently over 24 hours because the ventilation unit runs 24/7. So there's ways around this, and you can get building surveyors on board, but more effort, right? So that's the simple truth. The prefabrication prefab is still very young in Australia in general. So whether you prefab conventional or high performance, it is always going to be challenging. It's challenging. We face resistance from builders, from where we delivered the building shell only, saying we don't need this here, and we're taking jobs away, and carpentry jobs, and all of this. There's always, it depends who you ask. There's people extremely supportive on this and saying that's what we need. We need to, by 2050, we need to build 1 million homes to deal with the population growth. How are we going to get there? We need to think bigger. We need to dare ourselves to just think outside the square and come up with a solution to deliver these homes. In building them on site is not it. That I think we can all agree on. So we need to come up with different solutions, and prefab is one of them. There's a few people doing brilliant things in the industry right now. I think we're one of the very few that goes down the high performance route. And reality is that we can also we already can predict what's going to happen because it already happened in other countries, and Europe already does it and has been doing this for many decades. It will have to happen here as well. And again, the only thing is that we're talking about the things that are lacking in the country right now to stimulate that change, and one of them is a lack of training. If we in my apprenticeship, I ran through in Germany, we were trained from restaurating and renovating, churches out of the 18th century, like old timber connections, and also operating cutting machines and fabrication machinery and building homes on the computer. Mm-hmm. So there's a broad range of things that you have to be ready for to fix the old and maintain the old if you have to, but also operate in the future. That's as simple as, and the apprenticeship, I've got plenty of apprentices at any given time. And the apprenticeship here hasn't changed, hasn't moved a bit in the past 10 years. And I don't think there's any change in sight right now. So I'm not the person that complains about it. I'm generally the person I just do something about it if I can. So I'm actively involved in training for Box Hill Institute. I'm doing the Passive House tradesperson course, and we'll be looking into different options in the future as well to get the young guys involved, get the young people trained, because once you just get people coming through and for them, high performance and air tightness and consistent insulation and ventilation and good window installation is normal, we eliminate the problem at the source, because these people coming through and going, yep, this is how it's done, and they will just run their future businesses just that way. So there's a bit of a problem at the moment with the training there, because we just simply we don't have enough people there that know fabrication, that know high performance, So, but it was always going to be a problem, or a shortage, I guess, and we were actively working to overcome that. And again, we kind of knew what we were in for anyway. If you run into this thinking this is all going to be fine, then I think that's a bit naive anyway. So, and from there on in, everything else evolves. I always look at it from an angle that any new invention or any new procedure or any new product that comes to the market, whether it's a toaster or a phone or anything that comes to the market, you need to give people time to get used to it. And you need to also, in our scenario, we need to grow the entire market, from the designers, from the manufacturers, from the suppliers and the building surveyors. Everyone needs to evolve and come with us on this journey, and that just takes a ton of effort. It does. Mm-hmm. And we've gotten to this point now over the past few years that we have got suppliers that are on board. They understand the requirements. We've got designers on board that understand that we need to design within certain parameters. Building surveyors look at it, engineers look at it differently, and everyone kind of goes, yep, okay, this is prefabricated, so this is what's going to happen, this is the procedure, and off we go. So it's getting easier over time, but it's been a hell of a journey, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. What's usually the hardest thing to sell? Because on one hand you have the professionals, so the designers, the tradespeople, the builders, etc., and then on the other hand you have the clients that you serve or build for. What's usually the hardest message to get across on both ends, also from the client side and then from the back end team side of things as well?
That's a good question. I think bringing them together is a bit of an interesting scenario. So to give you an example, there was a client comes to us and goes, I would like you to build my house. Mm-hmm. And you're going, okay, we're doing prefab, we're doing high performance, no problem. They've done their due diligence and they know what they're getting. And they're saying, I'd like you to build my house. No problem. We can do that. Then we have engaged designer XYZ, a designer. Yeah. We like their work, and that's what's going to happen. Okay. So if the team is, not everyone on the team is fully on board what we're trying to achieve, then there is a very good chance that this is a very exhausting, long journey ahead of us where we're just trying to make something work that is not going to work. Like if there is a disconnect in the vision or the desired outcome, it is just a battle, the entire thing. So what I mean by that is, for example, I think we spoke about this before. If you want to buy a car, like I'm just going into the design side of it, you use the car again, because I get accused of that often, to the Germans turning everything into car manufacturing. And I know I'm okay with that. I think that's what actually needs to happen to streamline things.
That's a very relatable analogy as well.
Yeah, and I think that's what needs to happen, because if you, from a design perspective, if you design everything custom from the start, there's no standards to stick to, then it will be possible but expensive. It makes no sense. No one walks to a car engineer or designer and says, now listen, I want a car that is 2 point something meter wide and that height, and it's got to be, the wheels are just something big, like I like it, or small, I don't care, but designs a custom made car from scratch. Some people can afford it, that's great if they can, but most people, let's say, can't. They will just want a car. So if you compare this to the house, the process will be that someone gives a brief of what they want to a car designer, and they pass this on then to an engineer, and the engineer goes, oof, okay, well, there's going to be a lot of work in this. Well, they will come up with something. They will come up with a car for you as per brief.
Mm-hmm.
And then they will go to the manufacturers that are making the parts, and they're going, ooh, that's all custom. Okay, well, we can make it, but that'll be expensive because it's not streamlined, it's not standard. So they make these parts for you. Again, very expensive. And then someone come into your driveway and starts assembling the bits. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to happen, is it? That makes no sense. And the outcome will be a car as per your brief, but it will be a very lengthy, very slow, inconvenient, and very, very expensive process with a lot of uncertainty in it.
Mm-hmm.
The reality instead is that you going into to a car dealer and you're saying, I'd like, let's use the Golf, since, I'm German, I should be sticking to the VW. I'd like to buy a Golf, please, thanks. And they're going, yep, okay, no worries. What have you got in mind? Well, I like the GDI sporty version. I know nothing about cars here, by the way. I'm just making this up. But I like the sporty version. And they're going, yep, we've got this one here. Yes, I like that one. But can I have this, please, in red? I like leather seats. And I definitely should have a big screen in there with GPS on it, and maybe a tow bar and a roof rack for my bikes or something. They will go, yep, no problem. So you're writing down your requirements, they're making the list, they give you the price. That is it. And you can have this car fairly soon, because if you strip all the fancy bits away, it's still a Golf. It's still a Golf. The Golf has been, they manufacture the chassis, all the standard parts going in there, and then there's it's just red instead of silver. So that's like having a house when you're just changing the cladding on it. It's still the same house. So that's what's going to happen if you have that exact same Golf and you start going like, yeah, but I'm really tall. Can you just make this 50 mil higher? The chassis, just make it 50 mil higher. They're going, that $45,000 car just became $90,000. Because you changed the chassis of this thing. And we confronted often with the same issue where people are saying, what's here's a design, can you manufacture this? And we're looking at this and going, yeah, of course we can. And nothing is impossible, but you're just that little bit higher than the standard sheet length or stud length. Yeah, but I really like the ceiling height to be a 3.1. You're going, if you make it 3050 or 3 meters, it's standard, use the standard chassis, right? But they won't, because the design is already there. I really want the ceiling height. And with that comes the knock-on for plasterboard offcuts and how many joints are there to trail off. We need to then have longer timbers. We've got more offcuts. Everything is then off standard. And that makes it expensive. So the disconnect often happens where the client wants us to build something because they're saying, I'd like this to be built well, I built this to be fast and cost effective. Okay, but that is not in sync with the drawings that we're receiving. Does that make sense? So we've got external drawings, and again, it's not every designer. Don't get me wrong. With some fantastic people we worked with in the past, and they really get it. They understand it, and they're working within these parameters. But for some of these scenarios, we just look at it and saying there is no standard here. There's completely random sizes for walls, and all the walls are different heights. Everything is angled. There's massive openings in there. Again, everything is possible, but that will be expensive. That's not a cost-effective design. So we don't really have any parameters for designs. We've just got no guidelines here. Everyone seems to be starting from scratch rather than saying standard height is X or standard height is always Y. I don't know what the heights will be, but designed to some sort of standard. And if the design is already done, then we often get this where they're saying, well, now you would have to change this, to operate within our standard sizes. So then they're going, well, that's inconvenient. Now all of a sudden it looks like prefab is an inconvenience, or prefab is very limited, or there's a lot of restrictions to it. And then on top of it, the designer has to go back to work. Now, who's paying for this? Do you understand where I'm going with this? There's this disconnect there. And we've overcome this because we, in a lot of the scenarios, we're doing our own designs. We've got our own in-house design department where we can just operate within these parameters and saying, yep, this is what it is. And the reality is that people, if you got a really fancy, really nice design, they go, this is beautiful. I'll really like that. But you can have a similar design, much simplified, saying this is high performance and this is buildable and this is within your budget. And people would, if you don't compare them right next to each other, then it's not relevant. If you're saying this is the option here, do you like it? And they're saying, yes, I do, because it's a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, so there's nothing wrong with it. So that's what I see is it's a great challenge to bring everyone together. If you got that sorted, then you throw the engineer bit into the mix, because if you got the designer on board, then you might have something that you're going like, this should be fine. And the engineer comes back with steel and concrete. Brilliant. So now we kind of have to engineer that out of it or get a different engineer, because that's our approach is timber first or timber only if we can. Due to carbon emissions and just the simple fact that we are manufacturing timber, that's what we do. So there's a whole lot of problems. The simple solution to this is getting everyone on the same page.
Early on.
Day one, everyone in the room, everyone on the screen, I guess, in the COVID times, what are we trying to do here? One of my good friend of mine, a business mentor, always said to me, imagine you're building a fence. Now, if you don't, from the current post, the first post that you're setting, and you don't set the end post, there's a very good chance that you're getting off track and you're sort of weaving to the left or to the right till you eventually get to your goal. If you get there, there's a chance that you lose track and you have to correct it or go backwards and rectify things. But if you set the end post first, then you can get a string line across and everyone knows what we're going to do. So if everyone sits together and saying, who does what and what is the outcome here, then we can determine what we're going to do, and everyone has got a direction to follow. That's as simple as it is. And if the client says, I have got $500,000 to build a house, then that pretty much, for me, my initial thought would be, okay, we have to keep the cost under control here. So let's come up with something that is standardized. All right, let's come up with a golf that isn't a GTI for now. Like, do we really need this to be GTI? Do we really need to be this Passive House certified, or is it a standard golf version of this? Without the oversized wheels, which still works fine. It drives well. I'm just trying to draw the comparison again there, because you can create an extraordinarily comfortable home that is net zero and operates without any running costs, is all year round comfortable, which isn't passive house certified. You can have a high performance double glazing in there. You can achieve the same air tightness. You can have a consistent insulated envelope and consistent ventilation. You don't have the certification, and passive house would, take the comfort to a next level, but that's still an extremely comfortable, energy efficient home. So if the budget is the driver, that's what we're going to do. Therefore, the standardized panel sizes have to be the driver. It has to be driven by this, and then make it look pretty. From a design perspective. So let's use a box of Lego bricks and build something out of this. But don't, bring in Play-Doh or some random bits that won't connect with Lego. Stick to the Lego bricks that you've got in that box, and the designer's responsibility is then, out of the Lego bricks that are there, make something beautiful. Then everyone has got their responsibilities, and the engineer needs to know, right, tell me what sort of spans these Lego bricks have got, or something like that. I'm just trying to, bring in another example there. But the outcome is clear. If it's driven by design, and the client's saying, look, I've got $1 million here. I want something that is unique and that will be on the front page of a magazine or wins an award. Easy done. No problem. Now this thing is driven by design purely. Right. Or the outcome is, I want this passive house certified. Okay, well, let's bring on paper a sketch of this and run them preliminary analysis. And we find we have to go triple glazing here, or we have to beef up the walls or the insulation or something. Again, the outcome has to be clear. Set that end post and then start building the fence. Don't go random about it.
Oh, yeah, I have a question. So using the car manufacturing analogy, we've been talking about golf. Do you have an option, like within your standard, to offer an SUV? Or let's say, do you review your standards based on your client's demand? Or you have a standard ceiling height, or let's say medium or high ceiling height? Standardized, like 3 sizes, if you like.
Yeah. See, that's a really good point. So if we just to make this completely confusing, if you think of the Lego block, the Lego blocks, I've got out of that box with bricks in it, you can just build a cube, and that is that. A boring, one color, nothing. The same box of bricks, you can make a castle out of it, or a bridge. Right? So it comes really down to the creativity. We can have, where I'm going with this is that with our standardized panels, we have built backyard studios, that we have built residential homes, large and small. We've done commercial childcare centers, and we have done townhouse developments. You can go multi-res with it if you want to. So the application is completely open, depending on how creative you are with it. So if you have got high sort of commercial loads, for example, the childcare center, we had to put like a CLT, a cross-laminated timber floor in it, because we had commercial floor loads. So all of a sudden you might have to strengthen up the system, the walls, to deal with these loads, but it's still the same wall. It's still the same system. Wall heights, that's one of these things. I can do any height, but the most efficient heights are determined by the sheet size. With that, I can also keep the offcuts low. And if the offcuts are low, the wastage is low, therefore the efficiency is high, therefore the price is low, because I'm not actually cutting things off and throwing it in the bin. So anything is possible, but at the same time, it's important to understand that people going, the prefab is flexible. Do you know what reality is? It is not. It's it is, the system has to be a system that's like the chassis that's manufactured at VW. That has to be consistent. Otherwise, you have got a million components in the yard and that you need for this process. So keeping the manufacturing simple and consistent, but what you make out of it, that's extremely flexible. You can have 2 panels on top of each other or next to each other, creating more heights. You can put a plate on the concrete slab to gain a little bit of height. You name it. It's so project specific this is, but there is within the standard is a great amount of certainty. If you look at the traffic lights next time when you're out look at how many cars driving past, and then tell me how many different brands are there. There is not that many, but all of them, they look all different. There's all different cars driving around, but you can really probably bring it down to like 10 brands overall, or makes that are making these cars, but somehow they all look individual whilst being a standard. That's the key, and that's why having similar approaches there to the manufacturing process of cars is not a terrible thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just need to have that conversation and thinking very early in the probably even pre-design if that's a path you want to go down.
Yeah, and there can't be any
efficiency.
There can't be any ego in this. Like there has to be flexibility from each team member in this. So if someone says we're doing timber only, well then the engineer can't go, well, I just engineer steel. You can well then you're in the wrong place, or the designer says you're ruining my design because of your standard sizes. Well, hang on, the client is firstly in the driver's seat here because they're paying for all of this, and you knew that they want to work within with or using our system. So why haven't you designed something that works within that system? We're here to help. We're here to go through or collaborate in this process. Or equally, if the designer says comes up with something that the clients really like, and I can't say, well, I can't manufacture this because it's too hard, it's outside my standard.
Yeah,
it has to be a collaborative approach to achieve a successful process and project.
Yeah. Just one last question before we move to, because I'd like to hear more before we wrap up, more about CarbonLite as an entity.
Yeah.
Before we move to that, is there, because you mentioned that there is a significant correlation between, say, cost and the customization that comes with that. So if it's not standardized and everything is customized, then obviously there will be an effect or an impact on the cost. Are there any specific components that usually have a very maybe asymmetrical impact on the cost from a build side of things? Whether it's the fabric, whether it's the windows, and then maybe secondary to that, do you find that performance and cost have a similar correlation, in the sense that if you the same way you have customization impacting costs almost asymmetrically, do you have a similar trend when it comes to performance as well?
I think what we often see is, or what makes it challenging and expensive, is wall heights, like I said before, that are just a little bit higher than what it needs. People are just used to 2.7 meter ceilings or 3 meter ceilings. Mm-hmm. Now, the standard for wall height it's one thing, but then you've also got, now that you've got heat recovery ventilation, you've got ducting inside the house. Therefore, you often need to suspend some of the ceiling. You lose a little bit of ceiling height. And it doesn't end up being exactly 3 meter, then it's 29.50, like 50 mil lower than what you used to or something.
Yeah.
So there's just minor things, right? And then all hell breaks loose all of a sudden because we're losing 50 mil. Mm-hmm. So if you wouldn't point this out, and people walk into a completed home and the ceiling height is 29.50 instead of 3 meter, no one would notice. No one would care. Unless you really put a tape on it. There's no visual impact. It's no something that really you go like, now you made me feel claustrophobic in my own house. Why? Yeah. So it's just not it's not the case. It's gonna be just fine. But when these heights, when we insist on 3 meter and clear a finished ceiling level, then you're unnecessarily driving the cost up. I find that in a lot of the designs, we're trying to obviously everyone wants to connect to the outdoors, right? To bring the indoor inside, bring the outside inside, and so on. Like, we really like that open feel. Therefore, we often see an enormous amount of glazing. Now, with large glazing comes the chance of overheating because you've got a lot of solar gain if you've got glass areas. And if you then, therefore, you need a shading solution. And massive openings also require massive structural requirements. So you often then got a steel lintel over it. The steel lintel needs to be thermally broken, therefore needs to have insulation or high-performance insulation on the outside of it. It's just another detail point that's thrown into a steel beam, has got often a steel column, which requires results in a point load. The point load needs to be taken care of. Therefore, we've got an additional footing, and this thing rolls on and on, So it's just one design thought of it and saying, this would be nice. This would be nice, just cost $30,000. So it's you can put a price tag on this would be nice, all of a sudden. So instead of that, you can, if we then go back to the design point and we're saying, what are we trying to achieve here? Again, set the end post and well, we've got a beautiful view, right? So then have to achieve the effect, like by having, I'm just making this up again now, but if you've got a fixed glass panel and a large fixed glass panel, floor to ceiling, and one sliding door in the middle. Now, we'll have mullions in between to take the structural load, but all your openings are within reason that can easily be transferred with timber beams, let's say, or timber lintels above the opening. Therefore, are you thrown out the point load? So little design tweaks like this, well, we just need to ask the question, how badly do you want this? Because what you've designed there is expensive. Is the client aware of this? And it's a lengthy, hideous exercise as a builder to go through this, and I'll mark up with a red pen, because then it's almost like I come across as a smartass telling designers what to do. And they're going it's not my design intent. Okay, I understand that. I'm not trying to step on toes here, but I've been asked to find a more cost-effective solution because your design intent has gone over budget. So it's a really delicate conversation to have if not everyone is on the same page. Then we find often homes are very large. That's a contributing factor. We seem to, in Australia, building for resale value rather than what do I need for my family. No, that's just often because people simply do move on, or it's just something that people worry about. But to give you a short story there, when my parents came over the first time to Australia, and I showed them around on a couple of our sites, and it was upstairs, was just the entire upstairs area was just a master bedroom. It was enormous, and you need a big master bedroom. And so there's the sliding door in there. And my dad pushed the doors open, and he goes, "Oh my God, there's a bathroom in the bedroom." I looked at him and going, "Dude, that's an ensuite. Like, you got to have an ensuite. Otherwise, the house doesn't sell for a certain value." And he goes, "So what's wrong with, there's a bathroom just over there in the, just down the hall." And he going, "Yeah, but that's a bathroom." He goes, "Well, what's wrong? Can't you from the master bedroom walk along the hallway into the bathroom?" "Yeah, you can, but it's just nice to have a second bathroom, I guess." And so you make me then reminded me what we used to do. Well, you're going can we afford this? If it's affordable and people have got the money to build this, fine. But if it's your family home, what do you actually need in it? How big does it need to be? Can a smart design, I believe, and again, it's design. So it's not for me to tell people what they build and how they build it and what size they're building. That's everyone for themselves. But my personal opinion is that you can build a 180 square meter home that has got 3 or 4 bedrooms very comfortably with a smart footprint. That's going to be a fantastic home. Now, that shaves quite a few $1,000s off compared to a 240 square meter home. Are you going to stay in it? Are you going to sell it on? Again, that's so broad, this thing. And then, I can't answer that question for everyone, for every individual there. But if we really want to shave down some costs, then we got to address that as well. We're building enormous homes, I think from a performance, what was the second part of the question? The performance and the price.
So with customization, there is obviously an impact. So the more you customize it, and the less standard the design intent is, then there's also a correlating cost implication to that. So just wondering whether there is a similar correlation when it comes to pursuing performance. So the higher the performance you're targeting, whether that increases whether there's a premium to the cost as well. Or
that's a really good question, because that's what it all comes down to, isn't it? Really, in the end, it comes down to cost. And I think the important thing here, I've been in so many meetings where we've gone through this and saying, well, how much is that? How much more is it? You're like, well, hang on a minute. To be able to compare, you got to create some sort of baseline, right? So that otherwise it's a ludicrous nonsense comparison. You're saying like, how fast can you go in your Mercedes? And you're going 200 k's an hour. How fast can you go in your roller skates? You're going, well, that's a lot slower. You're going, well, it's roller skates. What are you talking about? That's obviously it's a completely different thing. Yeah. So if you compare Passive House, which is the Merg, with the roller skate, which is the 6-star compliant home, you go, oof, this costs more. Yes, 100% it will, because you have got single glazing versus triple glazing, to just name one of these items there. So the comparison makes no sense. I think if you want to have an accurate idea of what the cost will be, you have to compare sort of somewhere between 8 to 10-star home built to that standard, and then you can say, well, how much is it, the Passive House compared to that, so that you actually have got a high performance, decent home based on the star rating compared to Passive House. Vastly depends again on the design and how it's designed and what it is. There is some figures out there that homes have been built for somewhere with 12 to 15% additional cost. If they're built a decent standard, let's call it that, and then you upgrade to high performance or Passive House. We've got an interesting scenario where we have created the range of our own designs. So basically spec homes, if you like. So it's our Rubik House range. And the Rubik House range can be built for the same price as conventional building. So there is no additional cost to their design, or to the end product. Now, the simple reason is that we integrate what forms the new minimum standard. That's what we set for ourselves. So again, the air tightness, the ventilation, the high performance glazing, consistent ventilation. And in some instances, if the orientation is right, Roberta, you know more about this. In some instances, a house design built well can perform Passive House. You put it on a different site, it doesn't, right? Because the orientation is not right, or your solar gain is off. So in the main focus point here is for us is that we're building them to high performance, and just disregard Passive House certification for a minute, because it's site specific. So we're building them well, we seal them well, we test for air tightness, we certify air tightness, we're putting high performance glazing in as a basic. Now we've standardized this. We're also in charge of the design stage. That means I can really drive this thing forward and create good looking 4-bed, 2-bath homes. I can manufacture them myself, I can build them myself, and therefore the end result is on par with conventional building. We've seen some of the townhouse developments that we are on par with conventional. Again, because it's higher volume, we can actually put them out. So if VW would only manufacture 200 VW Golfs per year, the price will be very different to them manufacturing 2 million per year. So with higher output, it enables us to drive the price down and offer that to a similar price as conventional, whilst we're reducing wastage and whilst we're dramatically reducing the overall construction time. So we're adding a lot of benefits to it, and it helps us driving the price down.
Nice.
It's an interesting scenario. What I found recently, there's when Passive House certification is the goal, right, the end post of that fence that we're building, then Often we seem to, or there's a chance, trying to word this carefully here, a chance that we get too hung up on the numbers. So if the preliminary assessment of this, it gets a bit technical here, but the preliminary assessment shows that you are at 15 kilowatt hours per square meter per year. That's within passive house. That is going to be an extraordinary house and really well performing. But in the design stage, you want to be around 11 or 12, right? So 12 kilowatt hours per square meter per year. So to have a bit of wiggle room if something doesn't go as per plan on site, and the final assessment isn't quite there. So that, if you get marked down, then you've still got a little bit of room and that you don't fail and not get the certification. Now, we've come across multiple of these designs where you're saying, look, the way it's designed, it's going to be a perfectly well-built home. It's going to be net zero. It's going to be very comfortable all year round. It's got everything. And we were then asked to increase the wall thickness to get to the certification. So we found then some projects that they often add like $50,000, $60,000 for like 3 kilowatt hours. That doesn't make any financial sense. As much as I'd love, and I always encourage people to get the certification, and I've been the Passive Association member since the beginning. Like I strongly support every move that we make in there, but at some point, pretty much all the time, it does come down to the financial viability of it, because someone's got to pay for it.
Yeah,
and if it's out of proportion to achieve a couple of kilowatt hours for an enormous amount of money, additional money, then someone's got to call it, right? Someone's got to be responsible and go, you know what?
It goes back to that question of how bad do you want this?
Yeah, how bad do you want it? And if some people can't afford it, but I believe that the field we're operating in, we want to make this accessible for everyone. We want people and families to live in these homes. And that means it has to be realistic, it has to be affordable, it has to be designed well, it has to be comfortable. And I don't want to compromise on any of my performance components that are going into this, because it's too expensive. Then something else got to give. But there is absolutely no chance that I'd build any house without these minimum standards. Like it's even conventional homes should be built with ventilation in it. It's reckless and irresponsible not to, because it's harmful to the occupants, I guess.
Especially when consider that the houses will be around for a very long period, an extended period of time, and probably be resold to someone else. And
it's driving around without a seatbelt. So I've had so many really interesting discussions about this, and on conferences as well. Like that's in public. There's no one sort of in the back room saying, I think this is all nonsense. No, really in public, people debating against this, where they're saying, look, this ventilation, I don't really think we need it, or air tightness or insulation, because it doesn't get as cold as it is in Europe. We don't really have that problem here. And you're going, okay, let's look at the facts then. Let's look at some climate data, what the temperature does, let's say Victoria for now.
Mm-hmm.
So you see the amount of times we're dropping during the day or overnight at the temperature level, which is required for mold growth. Now, that temperature doesn't change. It's 9.3 degrees. That is what it is. It's physics. Mm-hmm. So that surface temperature, together with high moisture content, creates condensation, and with condensation you will have mold. So it's not, again, using the car as an example, that's like you saying, well, sorry, would you like to buy this one, please? And they're going, yeah, it doesn't have any brakes though. And you're going, yeah, that's fine. Or let's say it has brakes, but they only work in dry conditions. And you're saying, yeah, it's fine. It rarely rains in Australia anyway. It's a hot country. It's ludicrous. You would give the car back, wouldn't you? You would go like, no, hang on. Like, what happened if it rains again? It doesn't rain that often. It'd be fine. So over that. it's just a crazy concept. And the ventilation is the same thing, where you're saying, oh, you need consistent fresh air in the house. And you're going, why not? Well, why is that? Because you're breathing in bad air every single night in your own bedroom, and you're sleeping in there for 8 hours. And you're going, well, it doesn't, like your car won't have an airbag. You're like, wow, you really need a crash for this airbag to be useful. Otherwise, it's why would you? It doesn't make any sense to build homes that are harmful to the occupants, and that is really an uncomfortable thing to bring up, especially in public on a conference, where the majority of people are not ready for this message. But I have to said this in the past: is if you build something that there is a chance or probability within the house that you have got a cold surface through a lack of insulation, you have got a lack of air tightness and a lack of ventilation, and there is a chance that you will have condensation and mold growth in the house. The house is not fit for purpose. That's as simple as it is. And this is as simple as you break it down to. That if the house is not fit for purpose, it is causing harm to the occupants. That is really what it comes down to. That, to the very first question, my responsibility to look after their client's best interests and their health. That's what we're building their home, for God's sakes. So if you sit in the car and someone will give you a car that is not fit for purpose, you would immediately sue them or give it back. We had this airbag scandal thing, where urgent recall, everyone come in now because the airbag might just go off for zero reasons, and it might actually kill you. And everyone, oh my God, quick, get this airbag swapped over, get this car back to where it came from. And there was an immediate response to it.
Yeah.
And in the housing, we live in homes that are unfit for purpose. We're building them by the masses today still, and they're getting approved. They're getting permits. We'll get them, build them. We're getting occupancy permits. People live in them, and then all of a sudden we don't know why we got such a high asthma rate on. Death rate is going through the roof. More people die in Australia in their homes than they are in Sweden due to the cold. What is happening? It's just a strange concept.
There are a few points there that you've brought up that I'd really want to dig deep, and I think we'll probably have to set up a second conversation to explore them.
Slightly over here.
Yeah. But just before we wrap up, usually we do spend some time just getting a feel for the entity itself. In this case is CarbonLite. And just rapid fire questions really. What's in the name CarbonLite? Like what inspired the name?
Look, the truth is that I worked with my friend and partner at the time in Scotland, and it was CarbonLite. There's always been CarbonLite. It made perfect sense. I heard it the first time, going, "Yep, that's it. That is the name." And it's just stuck from there. When we moved over here, he said, "Yep, how's things going?" And they changed. They operated, or still operating in Scotland, and they became Carbon Dynamic. But we've always been CarbonLite. It kind of made perfect sense to me. And then the name kind of became the mission. That we're saying, look, that's one of these discussion points where you really said we need another session on this, but like we have got a strong sense of urgency for change. Like I want people to be healthy in their homes. Yes, that's my driver. That's why we get out of bed. That's what we're doing, and that's why we do it. But the flip side to this is the what I again personally consider the climate crisis. Like we have got a real issue on our hands, and I am unsure if we're going to be able to fix this in time. And that sounds potentially a bit cheesy here, but I want my son to look back when they are dealing with the issue. We're probably going to be just fine, but they are going to deal with the worst of it. Look back and say, like, look, my parents have done what they could, everything that was within their power. And if we can't continue doing what we're doing only because, well, we've always done it that way, that's just lazy and irresponsible, you know. We're not riding in horse and carriages anymore, you know. We're driving in safe cars. So that everything changes and everything evolves, and so does the construction industry. It's just a matter of how quickly can we get this done.
Yeah, I really think we'll definitely have to have a second conversation, especially around the carbon side of things, and maybe the next conversation will be centered around the materials, the building material side of things.
Yeah.
Today was more really about performance and energy efficiency. As we wrap up, how maybe just taking a few steps back, are there any trends you're observing at the moment in the industry? So, for example, whether it's the uptake in terms of the prefab homes or design, it's something that is a steady change and accelerated growth, or just any observations you're making at the moment, or you're forecasting.
Look, we've seen. If you think of CarbonLite, we're like about 10 years old. That's not very old for a business, you know. Consider 10 years to be relatively young. When we started off, there was literally, we couldn't even get airtight membranes in the country. ProClima shipped this over from New Zealand. They weren't even here. You know, so their office that they had was a phone number. You know, so it was a completely different time to what we're operating in now. It was insane, and now we're seeing these inquiries where we're getting somewhere between 5 to 10 inquiries per day. You know, so there has been a really dramatic shift towards high performance homes, and there's many different drivers for people, and many different reasons why they're doing it. But in the end, again, we can address all of these reasons, because whatever your driver is, the home is really what creates that, whether it's health or it's you know, no power bills, or you're worried about the climate. This one product, this one system addresses all these issues. And that is an exciting trend to see. You see now businesses, and, you know, larger businesses, everyone has got a sustainability manager, you know, so that wasn't the case before. So large corporations, large businesses like IKEA, they're moving towards renewable energy, and they're going into having their own virtual power plants. And so when that happens, I think it is an incredibly exciting time to be alive right now, because we're really becoming aware of how urgent the situation is, and businesses discover that there is a real opportunity, because wherever there's a threat, and there's a threat now, like the threat of loss of biodiversity and climate change is so much bigger than COVID right now. But a lot of people identified the opportunity behind this and saying, you know what, this is it. Like, we can transition, we can do better, we can do exciting new things. That goes across the board. All our suppliers and the contractors, I got to say as well, they're really engaged in this. And every time when we come up with a new idea, they're saying, let's sit down, let's talk. This sounds great. What do we need to do to make this happen? And there's a lot of the naysayers and the critics and the negative people that were constantly there in the beginning saying, no, you can't do that, that'll fail. You know, they all of a sudden becoming quieter and quieter, and the noise becomes louder on this side saying, yes, let's do this. So there's a great amount of enthusiasm in the industry. And that's really been driving our next phase, our CarbonLite's next phase, to deliver more Rubik houses. So we've teamed up with another business called Build 1000 to deliver Rubik houses. So pre-designed homes, that's our next aim, that we're doing a lot more of the spec homes. The simple reason is that we can manufacture them quickly, build more of them, so that with the aim to build 1,000, because then with 1,000 homes, you can really prove and show this can be done, this can be cost effective. Whilst we were forcing this change or this transition in the industry, we're taking everyone with us. We're creating a complete net zero supply chain. So across all components that are going into this, every single supplier is part of this journey, that you know, not just having a great house, but let's say high performance home, but it's built out of polystyrene and concrete. You know, well, brilliant. That kind of defeats the purpose. You know, like we're closing the cycle and saying we come from the start and being responsible and being smart about the material choices on our suppliers to be net zero and forming part of this process, manufacturing carbon neutral, and then have homes that operating net zero as well. So then you've just really got the entire chain. The loop is then closed when you're saying this is a truly sustainable procedure and sustainable business. That's what we're aiming for, and that's what we're going for the next few years.
You were able to develop this supply chain within the Australian manufacturing base, or do you think like yourself and like most of the other passive house developers are still looking at European suppliers for the high performance, let's say the windows and
it has to be local
ducts and stuff?
It has to be local. That is the simple truth. Some components you just can't obtain over here just now. Like you know, for like windows and doors, for example, it's a very interesting one for that sort of price bracket. It's just not competitive over here yet. That will change as well. And all of the business has to be local. One way or another, that is what needs to happen for everything to be truly sustainable.
Demand, high volume.
Well, you've seen this now. COVID really showed the weak spot there. You know, we're on an island, and when the whole shipping collapsed, and there's even now there's incredible delays on everything. So it just doesn't get here in time. So we have to do this ourselves. And long term, as a business, we want to also get all our components local. So whether that's the frame and whatever else components going in there, so that we, you know, just be responsible, I guess, for all the components and choices that are going into a build.
I think that's a good note to end the conversation in. And I like the optimistic perspective. So and the idea that with every threat, all the threats that come by, they present new opportunities as well. And maybe in that we'll be able to come up with solutions that help mitigate some of the threats, or reduce the impact of threats. Thanks again for making time today, and looking forward to the next session.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's been a blast. It's been really good. Great to talk to you.